A young man who lives in a time where life on Earth is in danger of extinction must travel to the future to change the course of history and save humanity, where his decisions will make the difference between life and death in a year of chaos. Therefore, today 2067, our story begins with news of the devastation caused around the world by global warming, with environmental disasters that make plant life disappear, which is why a disease spreads quickly due to a shortage of air. This is the reason why people are forced to survive using an artificial substitute for the imminent lack of oxygen. Meanwhile, on the streets, people are desperate, some getting sick and others committing terrible acts on the brink of madness. Now we meet our protagonist, named Ida, who is a common and ordinary worker trying to cover the medical needs of his sick wife. The next day at work, he is surprised by a subject who claims to have orders to take him to the office, and his friend Yu decides to accompany him. Both are taken to the offices of Chronica, which in this world is a company responsible for supplying synthetic oxygen to the inhabitants. There, they are greeted by the director, Regina Jackson, who oddly suggests that Ida may be the one who can save everyone on the planet. Once in the laboratory, they are presented with a secret project that the company has been working on. While a scientist examines Ida's wristwatch, a bracelet with a red light that he carries with him, it appears that Ida's father worked in that laboratory where he left an important legacy: the scientific advances in relation to space-time travel. At this point, we don't know what happened to Ida's father, but it can be concluded that he does not like to talk about him. The director Regina explains the results of the first tests, which were successful with radio waves that bounced back with encoded signals from the future. Ida's friend asks if it's a time machine, and both are surprised to hear that the results come from hundreds of years in the future with a message that is encoded for her to see. Convinced that people of the future, survivors of the imminent extinction, sent that message to save the population, they hope that he can be the first human to be sent on a time travel journey in a bar while consuming oxygen capsules. He confesses to his friend Jude that he will not leave his wife alone and will not accept the proposal from the director. But his friend reminds him that his father believed that a time travel journey could be the solution to the problems facing the planet. However, at that moment, he remembers, furious, that his father left him a suicidal message when he was 8 years old and therefore blames him for his mother's death. However, his friend asks him not to be like his father and to save his wife. This makes him remember his childhood memories and brings him back to the day when he turned 8 years old. His father had given him a birthday gift with the firm promise that he would be an important person. At the same time, he was running away from the place. Back in the present, his wife convinces him to make that journey for a second chance for all, and he remembers how on his birthday, his father and mother were on the street while he was running out of oxygen and was rescued by his best friend. Convinced not to let his wife die, and with the only condition that she receive the first dose of the cure, he is ready to embark on that mysterious journey that would give him a second chance. He is ready for an uncertain journey with a return ticket with his name on the suit and only with an artificial intelligence device called Archie. And so he embarks on the most dangerous adventure of his life and the most important journey of humanity. After its literal launch, the future falls from the sky onto some bushes that fortune cushions in its fall. Here is where everything gets interesting, because upon waking up with parts of his body wrapped in flames, he wonders where he is, or, better said, in what year he is. Astonished to see so much vegetation, he realizes he is alone. After a while, and with the help of Archie, he finds the remains of a corpse with a bullet in the head. First, he notices that the skeleton has a bracelet like his. Then, he notices that the clothing is similar to his. Finally, he is amazed by what he finds at that moment. So he was impacted when he discovered that there is another version of Archie, and it is damaged and deteriorated by the passage of time. He is almost sure that that corpse is the same and that he will die at some point trying to find the cure. He takes off the bracelet from the corpse, but it has a green light unlike his, which is still red. Anyway, they continue with the search, and with the help of Archie, he finds several objects that are used in the world where he comes from. This gives him hope of finding answers. When night comes, he tries to eat some unknown fruits from the area, but when he does, he starts showing symptoms of poisoning. When it starts raining, he sees a bright light falling from his position. Then he sees a figure chasing him with something in hand. So he tried to run, but his health condition prevents him from doing so when he is caught by a character who stabs something into his chest. Later, he wakes up in front of the fire thinking that that being was not real, only to realize that it is his friend Yu, who explains that he was sent to save his life after his vital signs were compromised as a consequence of the poisoning. Both of them set out to find all the traces that lead to the possible cure. And after a short time, they find the entrance of some facilities where they get a computer that welcomes him and gives him some instructions to activate it. What leads us to ask ourselves the same thing as our protagonist, to activate, that maybe that doesn't matter for now because by following the instructions the bracelet and so begins to take samples of his DNA and changes to green light, giving him access to what seems to be a replica of the Time Machine Chronicle, which starts a countdown with a date as a destination of 2067. And so he realizes that all the steps he takes could be the same ones that the corpse took, so he fears getting closer and closer to that fatal destiny by decoding the records of chronicles of a hologram of his father with a month and recorded a few years ago, when Haida's father had his first successful test, which yielded a message that when decoded was the same one that the director Jackson showed him, asking that it be sent to him. To all this, the artificial intelligence of the facilities warns them of another problem, and now they must solve the energy deficiency at that time, because otherwise the facilities could explode in a nuclear explosion at the end of the countdown. But if they solved the energy issue, they would only have a few seconds for the launch back to their time. Suddenly, many doubts arise for him, for example, the fact that they will send his friend to meet him in that future and not another person perhaps more qualified for that reason. He determines to find answers and also the cure for his wife before the time runs out. In the search he finds a couple of corpses of people with oxygen masks, including remains of what was a classroom where he finds the corpse of his wife. The memories of and so lead us to situate ourselves again on the day when he was 8 years old, when his father asks him over the phone to go for a walk with his mother, and suddenly a man chases them with a gun and shoots his mother. The man takes the oxygen mask off and she faints. Waking up with friends, Jules puts the oxygen mask on to save his life. He is sad for not being able to help his wife and feels that there must be another way to help her. When his friend tries to cheer him up by saying a phrase that alarms him, but it might be for the best, so that nobody will suffer anymore. This is the same phrase that is found in a recording in the corpse's archive just before a gunshot is heard. Jude is surprised to hear his own voice in the recording and asks for an explanation. He forces her to fix the energy problem 2 hours before the nuclear explosion. After failing to fix the energy issue, the facilities begin to evacuate some areas by closing doors. Despite his friend's disagreement, he decides to stay locked in the service chamber, trying to make a maneuver to redirect the energy and fix the problem. And so, he manages to restore energy with only 37 minutes before the portal launch. Then he finds an exit from the facilities that coincidentally leads to his skeleton, realizing that fate follows its course and that everything he did had to happen. Convinced that going back to the past he would shoot himself, then a discussion starts where Yacht mentions a plan that he doesn't want to give details about and tells it, and that he's just trying to protect him. Apparently, Yacht wants them to return to their time because they can stay there and survive. But Wai-Tan refuses to let them all die and plays a recording of his father on his birthday, where he recognizes that he made a mistake at that moment. Jude interrupts the recording, damaging the connections so that they can't hear the full message, so Wai-Tan locks him up and continues with the video. Wai-Tan realizes that his father recorded the moment of the call that day on his birthday and his mother's death. In the end, the recording shows the moment when he enters YouTube along with the director of Chronicles, and his father refuses to let him continue with his plan. Here, the director's plan is revealed, which from the beginning was only to save herself and a few chosen ones, among them, YouTube, making the final designs on the project started by Wai-Tan's father without his authorization. Their plan was to send someone who could fix the energy problem, promising to bring a cure, but instead, they would use the portal to escape from that time and abandon humanity. Wai-Tan's father informs them that only he can open the portal configured by his father and the director. Seeing that he won't need Dr. White anymore, he shoots him, and then orders help to protect the child until he is ready for the trip. After everything, Wai-Tan releases and tries to justify himself to Haida, but it doesn't work because Haida decides to end with that machine at all costs. Now, the recording of the Archie of the skeleton starts repeating when it is already in the holster and points to them, asking them to fight, but he makes him see that he trusts Yacht and he apologizes to his friend without stopping pointing. There is a moment of suspense that becomes epic when we all wait for the infallible shot until we finally hear it when we see that it was who committed suicide. Meanwhile, in the Chronicles facilities, some chosen people are being scanned and taken to the portal when the excited director gives them instructions before the launch to the other side. Wai-Tan remembers his father's words when he gave him the gift. At the same time, he cancels the launch and instead sends a message to the past. At this point, we know that Wai-Tan was the one who sent the initial message that asked them to send him that same message that reached his father when he was 8. The director orders to kill now and then crosses over and gives instructions to the people who will go with her, but her plans are thwarted when the transmission is interrupted and the portal is shut off. At the same time, she realizes that instead of the long-awaited trip, she sends a huge amount of bushes for the survival of humanity at that time, and damages the machine. The director is imprisoned for having been discovered with such a large amount of vegetation, along with the anonymous transmission of the recording where she shoots Haida's father. Finally, Ivan's wife receives a message from him, a gift from the future that symbolizes the fulfillment of his promise to give her a second chance. On the other hand, in the future, she travels to the places where her and her husband's skeletons were found, discovering to her surprise that neither is satisfied with having been an important person for humanity, as her father had said. The story ends with her living the rest of her life alone with her memories. That was 2067. Don't forget to give it a like, subscribe and turn on the bell to not miss the next videos.